Let's take a look at some major patterns in macroevolution. Remember that macroevolution is large-scale changes over longer periods of time. And macroevolution starts with speciation, which we've already learned about, and refers to simply the formation of a new species. On this phylogenetic tree, we can see that speciation events occurred back in time where a common ancestor diverged into new species. And in summary, this can happen when you've got geographic isolation followed by reproductive isolation. A physical barrier forms separating populations, and those populations can become genetically different and no longer reproduce even if reunited. Keep in mind that there are other methods of speciation, but this is a primary one. So that type of speciation can lead to divergent evolution, in which we have several related species that diverged from common ancestors, shown in the past on this evolutionary tree. And our evidence of divergent evolution is homologous structures, similarities in the structure of different species that show a common ancestor. An extreme form of divergent evolution is adaptive radiation, in which you have one common ancestor that diverged into several different species. And this often happens if an original species is exposed to new and diverse environments, allowing it to adapt to each environment and lead to several new species. Please be mindful, though, of something known as convergent evolution. If you look at a shark and a dolphin, you might be tempted to think that they diverged from a recent common ancestor because they have similar structures, but you would be wrong. The structures of a shark and dolphin are actually analogous. They have similar functions and may look alike on the outside, but their internal structures are actually quite different. A shark's fin is made of cartilage, and a dolphin's flipper is made of bone. And what this suggests is that they actually have a very, very distant common ancestor, but they evolved to be similar because of similar environments. And that's convergent evolution. Really the opposite of divergent evolution. And here we see it again with bats, birds, and insects. Bats and birds have homologous structures. The underlying structure is quite similar, showing evidence of a recent common ancestor from which they diverged. But birds and insects have analogous structures. These structures are only superficially similar. Underlying them, the bones are quite different than the makeup of an insect wing, which means that these guys converged due to similar environments. Now, how quickly can speciation happen? Well, there's actually two models. One model is called punctuated equilibrium. And in this model, you have a sudden speciation event, perhaps due to a dramatic environmental change, and then very little change in that species. So you've got speciation punctuating equilibrium. And this is well supported by the fossil record, where we see distinct changes in the fossils. There's another method, though, which Darwin favored, called gradualism. And in this speciation rate, you see that one species gradually changes over time until it diverges into two separate species. This isn't as supported by the fossil record, though we do have some transitional fossils, for example, fossils of these intermediate butterflies, that provide some evidence of gradualism. But overall, the time that happens between speciation events is quite large. In plants and animals, a speciation event will occur with 4,000 to 40 million years between one and the next. And overall, the time between each speciation event averaged 6.5 million years and rarely took less than 50,000. Let's take a quick look at the opposite of speciation, which is extinction. You may be surprised to know that of all the species that ever existed, only 1% remain today. What's caused 99% of all species to go extinct? Let's take a look at this graph. This graph tells us a few things. First of all, extinction happens all the time. It happened a long time ago, it's happening now, but the rate that it happened has not been very steady. There were 5 major mass extinctions over the past 500 million years, and these were probably due to dramatic environmental changes, like volcanic eruptions, asteroids, climate change, or continental drift. And each of these mass extinctions destroyed 50% or more of the Earth's species. But keep in mind that in between those mass extinctions, there were other smaller extinction events. And unfortunately, we may be experiencing a sixth mass extinction. If you look at the rate of extinction over the last several hundred years, more than 1,000 species have gone extinct. This current extinction rate is 100 to 1,000 times the normal rate seen in the past fossil record. And in fact, hundreds may be occurring each day. And the worst news is that we are likely to blame for this. Habitat destruction and climate change due to human actions are largely to blame. In class, we will take a look at some of the events that cause these different speciation and extinction patterns, and you'll have a chance to explore specific case studies and answer some questions you may have about how different organisms have evolved over time.